I had no money of my own. I didn't know what my future was going to hold. I was on the brink of a divorce. I knew that was going to be a factor for me financially. That was the moment when I said, I'm going to spend the rest of my career helping women like me recover from this similar feeling, or hopefully never have this feeling again.
Today we're joined by Molly Cloud, a nationally recognized financial advisor and passionate advocate for women's financial empowerment. Named to multiple Forbes Best in State lists, Molly has built a remarkable career helping women, from entrepreneurs and executives to artists and athletes, find confidence and clarity in their financial decisions. Through her leadership, mentorship, and her TEDx talk, Why Women Belong in Conversations About Money, Molly is changing the way women think, talk, and feel about wealth and independence.
Even if you stay married for forever, there's a good chance that as a female, you are going to be alone at some point in your life. Obviously, there's the surprises, there's divorce, there's death. It's almost imperative that as women, we empower ourselves to at least have a basic understanding of where our money is, how it's working for us, and what we would do in one of those situations that we're not expecting. We're talking about women in high-level positions with a high level of education who still aren't comfortable talking about money. And oftentimes they just let their spouse make all the decisions because they don't feel confident enough to do that.
What are some of the common barriers that women face when it comes to financial planning? For me, it's just not that I have no financial literacy, it's just time. And it's not very fun, honestly.
I think there's a few things. I think number one.
Welcome to the Art of Living Well podcast, where we empower you to take charge of your health and happiness. We're Marnie
and Stephanie,
board-certified integrative health practitioners, holistic wellness coaches, and passionate explorers of all things mind, body, and soul.
Each week, we bring you expert insights, real-life stories, and practical tools to help you bridge the gap between where you are now and where you truly want to be. From longevity and nutrition to mindset, movement, and healing, we dive deep to uncover the root causes of wellness and vitality.
Join us and our growing community as we explore what it really means to create your art of living well in a way that's authentic, sustainable, and uniquely yours. Hi, Molly. We are so excited to have you here on the show today. And I first met you when we were volunteering at 29029 Trail this past summer, and we were working together at the finish line, which was super fun. And, we started chatting, and it was really fun to hear about the work you do in the financial world and with women specifically, and empowering women with their finances. And I felt like it was a serendipitous meeting because Stephanie and I really haven't talked about this a whole lot on our podcast, and it's something that we think is very important. And so we're really excited to dive into this conversation today about financial wellness and how women at every stage of their life can build confidence and be an important factor in financial decisions, because a lot of times they're not. But before we get started, question for you.
Yes.
If you had to choose beach walk, mountain hike, or your yoga mat, where do you feel most at peace?
Oh, as much as I love the mountains, and it was great to meet you there too, it's going to be the beach for me. I love the water. The second I see the water, I'm like, I feel so relaxed and my toes in the sand. It's just, there's no place I'd rather be.
That's tough for me. I definitely beach or mountain. I mean, I love my yoga mat, but yeah, I'm kind of a mix. I can't choose one.
It's hard. I agree.
Yeah. I think being in the mountains near a lake
Yes.
is the perfect
Which
balance for
I
me,
just
'cause
got
then
back
you get
from
some
Banff
water.
and Lake Louise, which was the mountains and the lake.
Yeah.
And it was
That's
amazing.
awesome. I have not been to Lake Tahoe, and I think that might do it for me. I
Okay,
think
that's what I was
It's
just
beautiful
thinking.
there.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I've heard. So
Yeah.
that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
All right, Molly. Well, let's dive in, and we'd love for you to share with our listeners what inspired you to focus on, a career in finance, but really more specifically, women's financial empowerment.
Well, great question. I mean, I think in terms of how I got into finance, it was serendipitous, much like our meeting, Marnie. I was very young. I was just out of college. I was newly married. And honestly, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I had been in sales and there just happened to be an opening for trainees in the financial industry. This is back in 1998. It was much different then than it is today. So I went through a big training program and I did well and I liked it. And, after a couple years, I got pregnant with my twins and they're now almost 23. And I decided that I wanted to stay home with them. And so I was home with them for almost a decade. And in that time, I did nonprofit work. I stayed in touch with the markets. I did some real estate. But where I was in my life and in my marriage and in my household, it was so confusing and so different from what I had learned in terms of giving advice financially and what I knew to be true about understanding finances and gaining financial literacy and confidence. And so when it was time for me to go back to work, I was on the brink of a divorce. I knew that was going to be a factor for me financially, and I would have to be able to support my children to some extent. I knew it was time and it was the best place for me to return to, and that was kind of the moment when I said I'm going to spend the rest of my career helping women like me either recover from this similar feeling or hopefully never have this feeling again where you're just lost and kind of trying to start all over in a time when you're also taking care of 3 small children and everything else that's going on at that time.
Yeah, and I think your situation, unfortunately, is not unique necessarily. And I mean, Marnie and I have had this conversation, but we haven't talked about it on the podcast, just like our own financial literacy for our family and just understanding your financial position so that you're not surprised one day by, you know, some unfortunate situation, or you do need to support yourself and your kids. I mean, I think this is important literally for everyone. And, maybe you can dive in and just talk about like how do you inspire women to really step into their financial power and not just take a back seat, regardless of whether you have to, like in your situation, or just having the knowledge, even if your partner or whoever is kind of handling it all.
Yeah. So to your point, I mean, even if you stay married for forever, my parents are married 54 years, there's a good chance that as a female, you are going to be alone at some point in your life. I mean, that's statistical, right? So on average, women live 5 to 6 years more longer than men do. Women now are waiting to get married or not getting married. Obviously, there's the surprises, there's divorce, there's death. So it's almost imperative that as women, we empower ourselves to at least have a basic understanding of where our money is, how it's working for us, and what we would do in one of those situations that we're not expecting. And so, in terms of inspiring them, I mean, it's a little bit of tough love, but it's also a little bit of, telling them my story, which is truly a transformation of, you know, just 10 years ago, almost 11 now, but I had no money of my own. I didn't know what my future was going to hold. And I had a degree in finance or, a background in finance. And so you can change at any age. And I mean, I'm teaching my mom right now because my dad's health is declining. I said, this is what we're going to look at every month. And I showed her how to get on her statements, to get on her credit cards and see how her bank is, paying her auto debit from her. I'm sorry. Yeah, is paying her credit cards via auto debit. And we're just keeping track of things. And I'm explaining things to her like, RMDs, which are required minimum distributions once you hit a certain age from your IRA, how we have planned for that, how she can use that, what the tax implications are. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's one of those things. And I think I've seen in some of the other podcasts that you've done, every little step, it adds up and it's part of that consistent behavior. So just try one thing today. Try one thing that you didn't know yesterday today. With chat and Google and everything else at our fingertips, it's almost impossible not to be able to learn at least one new thing and that will empower you to learn more.
I think that's great advice, and I think about so I have 2 different camps of people that are in my life right now. I have a number of friends that have been divorced and have been very surprised and maybe even had the carpets kinda pulled on from under them in terms of, where they're left or what they're left with at the
Mhm.
end of the divorce, and then I have some friends who are, happily married and they're well off and they have no idea what's going on in their financial worlds because their spouses are managing everything. And a lot of times the spouse wants to manage everything and doesn't necessarily want the woman to be involved in that. So, like, how do you advise people to navigate some of these tricky situations?
I knew we all have two ages, our actual age and our body's internal biological age. What I didn't know is that I've likely lowered my biological age without even knowing. Here's the thing, because Americans eat so many processed foods and not enough fruits and vegetables, many, perhaps most, are 10 plus years older on the inside than their actual age. They're ticking time bombs. There's been a major university clinical study that suggests how to slow aging and diffuse that biological time bomb. Participants slowed their aging by drinking Field of Greens. That's all. They didn't change their eating, drinking, or exercise, just Field of Greens. I feel so energized each morning when I mix my Field of Greens with warm water and lemon, knowing that I'm starting the day with real organic superfoods. No need for caffeine to get my morning started. Each fruit and vegetable in the Field of Greens was doctor selected for specific health benefits: cellular health, heart, lungs, kidneys, metabolism, even healthy weight. I feel great knowing Field of Greens can slow how quickly I'm aging, and I encourage you to join me. Swap your untested fruit, vegetable, or green drink for Field of Greens while there's time. Check out the university study and get 20% off when you use the promo code LivingWell at fieldofgreens.com.
In 2023, I gave a TED talk about this and the reality of the fact that when things are going well and, everything's great and you're driving your car you want to drive and you're at the country club and you're doing all the things, the last thing you want to do is corner your husband or your partner and be like, hey, let's talk about money.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll
Right.
kill the mood pretty quick, right? But again, it's about those what ifs. And I think even husbands today know, that women are left in situations that they had no idea were coming, and they just have to know. I mean, worst case scenario, even if you said to me today, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't care how it's invested. I would at least want you to know that you have somebody to call. Like in that event that something happens, you know who the advisor is that your husband works with, know who his advisory circle is. If that's the bare minimum, it's not what I would recommend, but I'm just saying, like, you have to know at least who to reach out to and who you can trust in a situation like that.
And, it's making me think right now because we have some financial advisors and they'll once a year send us an email and want to meet. And I'm always like, oh, I don't want to go downtown and meet with them. I mean, it's just not, it's like at the bottom of my list. And so I keep putting him off and putting him off. And lately the guy, he's been emailing and we haven't met. And this is going to be the catalyst. Like I'm scheduling that meeting. Maybe you can get into this. Like, what are some of the common barriers that women face when it comes to, financial planning? Like for me, it's not that I have no financial literacy. It's just time. And it's just not a priority and it's not very fun, honestly, right? Like it's just not a fun conversation. There's other fun things to do.
Okay, I'm gonna push back on you a little bit, Stephanie.
Well,
Okay.
and wait, I'm gonna push back on you too, Stephanie. You should meet them without John.
Ah, and
Good.
maybe I should.
On
Just
your
to,
time.
like, get all of
Yeah.
your questions answered.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, that's a good idea.
Well, and
Okay.
what I'll say, because I know how you two are devoted to your own health and your own wellness. I mean, you can't tell me that you like going out and running however many miles you run, or hiking or walking every time, or when you're training for an endurance event and it's raining and you still have to do that 10 miles. You go out and do it. So I know you can handle a little bit of pain, and it's really not that bad.
You're right. So I'm going to do it. But, just maybe talking about some of those common barriers and then what women can do to overcome those barriers.
Right. I think there's a few things. I think number one, and I think you guys will probably understand this because we're all in a similar generation, probably the same. We were not raised to worry about money. I mean, worry about money maybe if my mom said something like, "Oh, we can't afford that," which she really had no idea. And I just believed her as her child. And, the fact that my dad got up every morning, went to work, paid the bills, decided how all of our family finances would be allocated. It just wasn't really a thing that we talked about in our home. And then my grandmother, Helen, would tell people that you never talk about money or your age or religion or politics. She had her things. So I think that's kind of built into a lot of us in this generation. I do think that the generations following us are a little bit different in the mindset, but still, the truth is that women just aren't typically in conversations around money. And I think that's the biggest barrier because We aren't talking about like uneducated women or just, women who put their heads in the sand. We're talking about women in high level positions with a high level of education who still aren't comfortable talking about money. And oftentimes they just let their spouse make all the decisions because they don't feel confident enough to do that. And that's why for me, it's so important that we as women start talking openly about it because it isn't scary and it really isn't painful. And it actually, for a lot of my friends and, even clients that I talk to, they're pleasantly surprised when they hear, you're going to be okay if something happens and this is how you're set up for the future. So I think the more we can all get comfortable around the topic and the more that we kind of kill those, those old ideas of it being a taboo conversation, the better we're all going to be.
Absolutely. But what about the women who maybe are just not talking about it because, like you said, it's taboo or whatever, they're letting their spouses manage things? What about the struggling women who are maybe single women and they're also overwhelmed by this topic and don't even know where to start?
Yeah, and I've talked to women like that before too. All of us, regardless of where we are, economically, we bring money issues to the table for whatever reason. And we women typically feel more shame around it than men. And I think that's going to hold us back. And I think when a woman is already struggling in other areas of her life, she doesn't feel like, her marriage failed, or maybe her kids are having some issues. Maybe she's having some other issues not related to finances, but mental health issues, things like that. It's just another thing that piles on. And, again, what I would tell them is number one, you have nothing to be ashamed of. The fact that you're even considering this conversation means that it's somewhere in there and that you have the ability to get more confident around it. And number two is it's only going to make your situation better. And there are ways to do that. And I think something that is kind of my personal mission. I can't in my career reach out to everybody and impact everybody at least to the level that I'd want to. Whenever I'm in these conversations, I try to let women know that there is always a way to move forward. There's always that next step. And so just, let's start talking and see what it can be for you.
Well, I think that's so important because the reality is, and I've just had some unfortunate situations with friends and neighbors where spouses have very suddenly and tragically passed. And wouldn't you rather have a little bit better of an understanding of your financial position now, even if it is a little dismal and not what you expected, than have to be put into the situation where you're grieving and mourning and dealing with all that? And then on top of it, you have that compounded effect of maybe some unfortunate financial news and you're not in the position that you thought. And now you have to pick up the pieces and figure it out. Right. And not to frame it in this dark corner, but I think that's where we have had the conversation a little bit in the past before, Marnie, where we've had people talking more from like what do you do in a situation where your spouse dies? So let's be proactive. Kind of like we talk about being proactive with our health. Like we don't know when we're going to die. We don't know if something, we're going to get some sort of chronic illness or disease. But what can we do today? Those little steps and that consistency, I think is so important.
100%. I mean, I remember one time I had been in therapy for a long time and I was like, okay, like I feel like I'm in a good place. Maybe, we'll meet again in 3 or 4 months, just check in. And the therapist looked at me and she's like, so when you feel good is the time that you should continue this process because it's only going to give you those tools for the next time you don't, right? And it's a lot easier to make a sound decision when you have those tools than it is in this, place that you've never been before. And like to your point about unexpected death, and then you've got all the emotional things going on around you, and somebody wants to know how you're going to pay for a casket. God forbid. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, why don't we try to get some comfort around the what ifs now while everything seems great? And then I think when you get into those situations, you're so much better off.
So, what are some top things you think a woman can do to make herself financially literate?
I mean, there's a lot, right? So we have Google and chat, like I mentioned. Those are great tools that anybody can access. But I think for the personal, learning about your own personal situation, there's a few things that will tell you a lot. And number one is your tax return, and you sign it every year. And that is attesting to the federal government that everything that you've put on there is true, et cetera, et cetera. So not only is that a legal document that you're signing, but it also holds a lot of information about your current financial situation, including not only the income of your whole family, but also, mortgage, tax write-offs that you get, other tax deductions that you get for different reasons. It's really like this packet of gold, as boring as it sounds. There is so
I've
much.
never heard of a tax return described
No.
that
I know.
way.
I mean, I can make anything
Ever.
fun, but but I mean, that is something that line by line you will. I mean, I could look at a tax return and tell you all sorts of stories about where you are, and what accounts that you have, because it's going to list all of your dividend income. I mean, there's just so much that you can learn from that. Now, I know it can be daunting. I just believe that's where you can get the most info. But besides that, to the extent of your ability and desire, having some sort of idea of your monthly inflows and outflows. I had actually, he was a mentor in the business once. This was a long time ago. And he said, it's very simple in our house. I make deposits, she makes withdrawals. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not sure that's going to be a long lived piece of advice. But I think that, if we can all get comfortable knowing, like, what is going in, what's coming out, and what's left over, and where's that going? I think those are little things that we can do to get a sense for where we are. And then, of course, there's all these other measures that we can take, making sure we're covered for risk, whether that's personally or your house or your businesses. There's just a lot to consider. But I think the simplest thing for women who are just saying, I'm going to start this today, is get a good handle on your bank accounts and your spending. And I would love for people to read their tax return.
Well, it's so
So,
funny you say that because I sign the return every year. Do I ever look at the damn
la
thing?
la la la
Me
la.
too.
And I
No,
mean,
Same with
people have
me.
gone to jail for that stuff.
I I know, and I'm like a former CPA. I mean, I was not in tax, but I've prepared tax returns or reviewed tax returns for people before. It's kind of scary. So, okay, someone who's listening to this conversation and she hasn't been involved in her family's financial, review process or what have you. And maybe she's a little intimidated, like it just doesn't want to have the conversation with her spouse. Like, what tips or suggestions to have that initial conversation and then empower them so they don't feel like, oh, well, I kind of want to know what's going on. No, like, and say it from an empowerment standpoint. And also, it's only going to benefit the entire family, especially when there's kids involved and everything, to have this like sort of, backup plan, if you will, in the event that something does unfortunately happen. Are you loving this conversation and want even more ways to live your happiest, healthiest, and most authentic life? Then we'd love for you to join our growing community on Substack. When you subscribe, you'll get bonus content and behind the scenes insights from us. Plus, you'll be the first to know about our upcoming programs and events. Your support helps us keep bringing inspiring guests and impactful conversations straight to you each week. So head to the link in our show notes, sign up today, and let's continue this journey together to create the art of living well.
Well, and I just want to add to that really fast. Even just thinking about, I have 2 girls, Stephanie has a daughter. How can we pass this along to our daughter so that they're growing up in a more comfortable environment where they can talk about this, with more confidence and, maybe when they're in college, thinking about your monthly inflows and outflows instead of like just thinking about, oh, well, my parents are paying for everything or whatever it is. Or maybe you're working your butt off and you're tracking it all, whatever. But really knowing what you're spending from a younger age.
Right. I
Well,
think.
Marnie, they have TikTok for that now. No, I'm joking because
Don't
my
get me
daughter has
started.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what you mean. What do you mean
because
for
she
finances?
she's come and said, "Oh, I follow this woman on TikTok, and she said if we do this and like saving, there's some girls out there that are talking about financial savvy and saving money and not spending it like on TikTok and social media." I'm just joking, but
There are.
anyway,
And some
yeah,
of that I think is great. I think the fact that even there's a conversation around it is good. I would never advocate for taking financial advice on social media, but
Yeah.
I do like that there's that conversation. And I've
Yeah.
seen some of these girls, and I think that they're making a positive impact, for the greater good. And if that's the way the kids are getting that information, I'm okay with it. But that all being said, I think that we can almost use our kids to put ourselves in a more comfortable, empowering situation if there are kids involved. And so, like with my daughter, my youngest daughter, she's 15 now, but she was maybe 6 or 7, and we started talking about stock, just like, Disney, I think is what the first thing we bought. And I used that Disney stock and just bought her a few shares to show her that she's now an owner of Disney. And I taught her a little bit about what a dividend was and how when you're an owner, the company pays you back, and that's what a dividend is. And so for every share, you get whatever it was, 27 cents or something like that. But it's them giving you money because you are one of the owners in the company. And she got really into it, and to the point where she would go on her iPad on the stock screen and look up the companies that had the highest paying dividends. And she, like, comes running down to my room, this is, like, about a week into it at 7, and she's like, "Mom," she's like, "You shop at Nordstrom all the time. Do you know how much they would pay you if you own their stock?" I was like, "No, tell me more." And, for a while, so we bought some Nordstrom and it did well. And she just enjoyed that whole aspect of it so much that it led to other conversations in the family. Her siblings, my older kids are 7 years older than she is. And even they, got inspired by her. And now my son at 23 is like, he follows the market and, he's texting me all the time about this and that. I just think if we can, if there's an opportunity to really use our kids to empower them, it makes the family talk about it more, it makes it more comfortable, and then, like, Marnie, to your point with your adult or approaching adult age daughter, I think the college budgeting is a great idea. Even if you're sending her a monthly stipend and she doesn't really have any concerns about her education being paid for, she can still learn to budget because let's just pretend that you don't have that credit card to fall back on if you spend all your stipend. This was my daughter for 4 years, and so, I'm sorry you can't buy this dress for this 100th formal that you have to go to. You have other dresses, but it's just like it's talking about the fact that at some point you're going to be an adult, and I'm not always going to be the one sending you money, and you're going to have to figure this out. So, which is where I am now with my kids. And the more you talk about it, the more comfortable it is. And I think if a husband and wife haven't talked about it in the past, having that family community conversation is going to make it a lot easier.
Those
Well,
are
and I know
such
we're
good
going
ideas.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like we're going a little bit off topic, but that just makes me think about, like, as a parent, and maybe you have some advice on this, like, it's always hard to know, like, when you should tell your child to spend their own money versus you covering, certain things. I struggle with this personally, like,
Yeah.
you don't wanna pay for everything, especially, like, one of my daughters babysat a ton. She made a ton of money babysitting, and then it's like, I want her to know the value of what it's like to spend your own money.
Yeah. I still struggle with that. So I have some friends who believe that their children, as they become old enough to work, they save, 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 save. If one of my friend's daughters, she got in a car accident, they made her pay for, the deductible. And that to me felt a little extreme. Now, of course, this isn't a situation where the parents are well funded, they can afford it. I'm not saying that people obviously should go broke to save their kids or buy their kids a car. I'm just saying that, I think parents all are a little bit different. And for us, what I've tried to do is impose the value of money on the kids as much as I can in responsible spending and things like that. And through college, the deal was so my parents didn't pay for my whole college. They contributed some, but my junior and senior year were very stressful for me, and, I took longer than I should because of it, but that's fine. But I always said, if I can afford to pay for my kids to graduate from any college they want to and not have any debt, like, that is my life's dream. And so I was able to do that, thankfully, but I was telling them the whole time, "Here's the deal. When I expect that you're gonna graduate on time. I expect that you are going to use that degree or not, but you're gonna find a career once this is over, and you're going to start spending your money to cover the way that you live." And that's kinda where we are right now. We're just out of college, since they graduated 6 months ago, May. And both of my children are supporting themselves in the sense they're paying for their own apartment. They're paying all their groceries and their utilities and things like that. We still cover their car insurance. they're still on our cell phone plan, they're still on our healthcare plan. So it's like, to me, it's like a slow weaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes, I think it's a nice little buffer for them that we can afford to do that, but it also makes me comfortable, like, slowly reducing the benefits, if you will. And it's constant conversation. I mean, we just said to my daughter the other day, like, "You can't be on our healthcare after you're 26, so you need to figure this
Right.
out."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's the law, I
it
believe.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So
And I think that's just having those conversations and figuring out, like talking to your spouse and agreeing what's comfortable for you based on your financial situation. And I think there is something to be said about just really having an appreciation for the value of a dollar
for sure.
and having your kids work as soon as they're able and earn some money, whether they're spending it to go to you know, the mall or buy their Starbucks or whatever, you figure that out, but that they understand, like, I had to work 5 hours to make X dollars, and then the government took a piece of it, and now if I wanna save up and buy something, I just remember growing up and and it was in a very different financial situation than my kids are, but, like, I had to save up and buy things,
I
and there
know.
is something to be said, like, you're not just spending money frivolously, and that's just gonna I feel like that's just a good value to instill in your kids
For
at a
sure.
young age, like you did with your daughter in the stock market, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think it's, again, I'm very pro open communication about finances. So, we talk about the bad, or, it's not bad, I shouldn't say that, but we talk about the concerning things that may be happening that could, make a financial situation different, or could, maybe this year we don't go on a big trip, or maybe this year you can't go to the, insanely expensive summer camp, whatever it may be. I think we're open about it's not a shame thing, it's not a guilt thing, it's just like, it is what it is, and this is the money that we use to support our lifestyle, and this is what we have left over to do these fun things, and this is why we work hard, and, so it's that balance. I just think that the more comfortable and open you can be with your whole family, everybody benefits from that.
Absolutely.
So, can you share a story of someone that you've worked with who's made some sort of transformational shift or has, gained a bunch of financial confidence?
Yes, and I will say it's a work in progress. So I have a client, and he's awesome, but I started working with him probably 11 years ago, and the first time we met, he was coming out of some financial stress. Well, he had addiction issues. He had a foreclosure on a house that he owned. There was a lot going on behind the scenes with his own personal issues around money. He was also on the cusp of wild success. He's in the entertainment business, and he was starting to come to grips with what that meant. And so the first time we met, we had, I'm pretty straightforward. And so I said, "Here, this is where you are, this is what you have." And he's like, "Well, I don't really even know what this means. Like, this is a lot of money. I don't, like, what am I going to do?" And he got, like, he was getting sweaty and red, and he took a deep breath, and he's like, "Molly," he's like, "just tell me, can I afford that $7 smoothie across the street?" He's like, I go there every morning, and I don't even know if I can afford it." And I said, "Yeah, you can afford it." And so from that, I mean, 11 years ago to now, there's many more zeros on his net worth, and he still occasionally will call me on a Sunday and be like, "I really want to buy this chair, but it's like $7,000. Can I afford that?" Like, "Yes, yes, you can." So, I mean, I think, well, number one, it's really good to have people around you and around your children who you can trust. And he knows that. Like, he knows, I think about him and his kids and his whole family, even his mom and his sister and everybody else, like they were my own. And I'm never going to give somebody advice that I wouldn't put into practice myself. So I think having that core group of people, trusted advisors around you, is very important. But I do believe, and he's a great example, that people can, just like we do in therapy or in physical, health, we can change where our mindset is now in a pretty short period of time and get into a healthier place financially, and also, emotionally and mentally, with the whole idea of money and trying to let go of some of those issues. So,
Okay, I think you bring up such a good point. And I know before we were recording, we were talking about sort of like the mental, physical aspect of completing a challenge. There is so much emotional baggage with people around money. I
So
mean,
much.
myself
Yeah.
included. My husband will be like, "Okay, depression era, Stephanie. And because I start to I can't throw food away. It's a real issue. I for sure had a former life under depression. He calls me that depression era Stephanie.
That's awesome.
There's all these and just the way I was raised about money, I can swing either way. But I've had a lot of conversations with women specifically about money and how they were raised. And, a lot of times I think it's if you struggled a bit or your family struggled when you were younger, and then you feel, fortunate that you've progressed to a point that you don't have to worry, but there's still that lingering self-doubt and impacts your confidence and your self-worth.
100%.
Can I buy that? Kind of how he said, can I afford that smoothie or that chair, right? And so how do you unpack and untangle that with your clients?
Did you want to add to that, Marnie? Because I can
I
get real
was
deep
I
here.
was yeah, no, I was just gonna say, even thinking about that, which I completely agree with Stephanie, I think people also worry, people that have struggled and then maybe have made it financially, but then they're terrified they're gonna lose it. So then they can't even enjoy it because they're so scared of going back to where they came from. So, yeah, unpack all of that.
Okay. So, and this happens with men too, I will say, but it's more prevalent in women. I'm sure you guys have both heard of the difference between a growth mindset and, stale or stagnant or, recession mindset or depression mindset, where you're just stuck. And that's truly an issue that many of us carry. It could be from our childhood, which I will also say is because our moms didn't know. And it was easier for them to say, we can't afford it than to try to figure out, okay, how, like in my case, at least, my mom, whenever we would say, oh, we want to do this or we want to, I want to get that shirt or whatever, it was easier for her to just say, we can't afford it than it was for her to go ahead and buy it because we could. And then have my dad ask, well, what is this? It was Burdines at the time in Florida. It was like a department store, but what is, why is the Burdines card so much or whatever? And she didn't want to deal with it. Like she didn't want to have that conversation. So it was just easier for her to say we can't afford it. But what that does to a child is it says, you don't have enough or you're not enough or it's really a lot deeper than just we can't afford it. And we couldn't unpack that at that age, but now that we have therapy, thankfully,
Yeah.
we can figure out where some of that comes from. And I have friends today who it's like rich people's survivor guilt. So it's people who work their butts off and make a ton of money and absolutely 100% could afford to take themselves on a vacation or go to the spa or whatever it is they want to do. And they have this like guilt around it. Like, I mean, I shouldn't do this. This is, this is frivolous or and what my answer to that is, especially if it's somebody who I work with, it's like, "Oh, no, you can." And the reason that you're not has nothing to do with money. And my advice at that point is you need to talk to somebody. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I've had a lot of therapy and I can see it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is definitely not a money issue. And so I think when we're talking about holistic wellness, most people think about mental, emotional, physical, spiritual in some cases, relationships, but finance, and I even looked something up this morning and I said I put into Google what is considered holistic wellness, and they listed all those things I just said, and then it said, and even sometimes financial and vocational help. And I'm like, okay, this tells me everything.
Sometimes?
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes.
And
Yeah.
in the word even, I'm like, so
Yeah.
it's shocking to people that you would think that financial wellness is important to your overall well-being, but it really is.
It
And it
is
causes a lot of stress, right? Like,
Yeah.
money causes
A lot
stress,
of stress.
whether you have it or you don't have it.
Yes, yes. Scarcity, that's the word I was trying to think of, like, the
Yeah.
abundance
Scarcity
the
mindset.
abundance
Yes.
part,
Yes.
I've gotten there, so I forget about the scarcity, but I came from a place of scarcity, and that's where I feel like so many women still are, and if I could just flip a switch and change that mindset, I would do it in a heartbeat because I've seen it work time and time again, where when you can do that, life, it just gets so much better.
Wow. And like you said, it impacts all areas of your life. So what I feel like this conversation today can impact obviously someone's financial, wellness, but also will have them reflect on other areas of their life that they may be also, challenged in. So what advice would you leave our listeners? And maybe it is focused on this, emotional scarcity mindset. What advice would you give to our listeners, women here for the most part, to help just what is one thing they can start doing almost immediately?
Well, I mean, something that I say all the time and that I mean, if I work with a life coach, and he's like, if you could stand on the mountaintop and scream one thing that everybody in the whole world could hear, what would it be? And I would say that wherever you are today is not your final destination unless you want it to be. And so every one of us, I don't care what the issue is, if it's financial or physical or mental or anything, any part of our wellness, every one of us has the power to make one small change today. And like every time we do that, it encourages us to take another step and make another change. And I think I saw in another one of your podcasts about physical wellness, it's like consistency is key. So if you can only motivate yourself to look at your credit card statement and see how many times you've gone, to the grocery store and how much you're spending this month, that's going to put you one step ahead of where you were. And so maybe next month you look at your eating out. Maybe next month you look at your, I don't know, entertainment costs, whatever it may be. Every little step that you take is going to compound on top of the last one, and it's going to put you in a better place. And so if I had that ability to reach as many women as I can, I would just say take that first step.
I love that advice. And also, if you're coming from a place of not having a lot of money, you can still change your situation.
100%. Yes. Yes.
It's just like that 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's all you're striving for. It doesn't matter where your baseline is at.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's sad and it's real that women stay stuck. And it like for me, it breaks my heart because I know they don't have to. And I've had people come back to me and say, she can barely get up in the morning. Well, I hate that. I'm sorry, and that's horrible. But there is always a but. And I think we have to dig deep in certain situations, and we have to know that we can make our situation better. And we inside us have the power to do that. It's great if we have the ability to go outside and seek help and do all those things. But even if we don't, there's still one step we can take. And that's to me so powerful.
Totally agree. And that's great advice. So, Molly, where can our listeners connect with you, listen to your TED Talk, learn more about what you do?
Well, I mean, the best place to find me is on Instagram. That's where like I'll put up little blurbs and kind of what I'm doing. It's just molly.cloud.says. So Molly Cloud says. I give it advice for a living, so I figured that was a good handle. But yeah, that's a great place to kind of, just check in, and I answer all my DM. I don't have that big of a reach, but I love helping people. It's truly my passion. And then I started another little Instagram that's called Midlife Masterclass, which is a play on my initials, MMC. But the content that I'm posting there is very focused toward women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And so that, there will be some elements of financial advice that also just has like my style and my wellness things that I do. But again, everything that I put out is truly with the mission of empowering as many women as I can. So that to me is what I feel like is my passion and my calling, and that's where I'm going to be.
Oh, well,
Love
that's
that.
wonderful. You're giving such like a gift to
Oh,
people, to
thank
women.
you.
So thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, this has
Well,
been
this has
great.
been such an important conversation. I know for me, it's like really been a catalyst to do some things that I know I've been needing to do. So thank you for that.
That's awesome.
And as we wrap up this conversation, Molly, we love to ask our guests, what does the art of living well mean to you?
I love that you guys call it an art because it is. And I think everybody's definition is different, just like art, right? So for me, it is being able to do things like this where I hope to reach more people than I can day to day. For me, it is being able to tell people like you that, if you asked me 10 years ago, I did not think that I would have been able to put my two kids through college on my own, and I did. It's the art of living well is just setting those kind of, I don't even want to call them goals, but it's thinking about what's the most important to me and figuring out how to get there. And so I love it. I think it's living well is whatever you want it to be. I think we also, like I said, have the power to make it be whatever we want it to be. So that's my answer.
Love that.
Beautiful.
And I love this conversation today. I'm so glad we tackled this topic because I think it's so important and, like you mentioned, not talked about very often, especially among women. So thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope even if we reach one person who starts saying, let's go to wine night and talk about money, great.
Yeah,
Happy to hear that.
Yep.
So,
And
exactly.
hopefully we'll see you on another
On the
mountain at
mountain.
some
Yes.
point.
I don't
That's what
want to
I was
commit yet,
thinking.
but probably.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Have a
Awesome.
great day.
Okay, you
Bye,
guys too.
Molly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Art of Living Well podcast. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more people discover our show.
And if you're ready to take your health and happiness to the next level, we would love to support you. Whether it's through our transformative group programs, personalized coaching, or functional medicine lab testing, we help uncover the root causes of your health challenges and unlock your vitality.
Visit www.theartoflivingwell.us to learn more and book a free discovery call. Until next time, keep creating your art of living well.